Week 14 is here, and this week we are going quick because none of these games, with a few exceptions, are all that important to us. The final wildcard spots are still up for grabs, but other than that, things have kind of fallen into place. It's not going to be a competitive final month of the season. Starting things off, Kirk Cousins making his return trip to Minnesota to play the Minnesota Vikings. And I want the best for Kirk. He's a good guy, regardless of how bad of a football player I think he is. But it's just not going to be his week to bounce back. He is playing one of the best defenses in football, who is super blitz happy. He's not amazing against the blitz. His only advantage is playing against the Flores defense in practice for an entire year. But still, that won't be enough. They're going to get after him. They're going to put a lot of heat on him. I think he will find a way to score some points, particularly if he gets Bijan involved early. But it won't be enough to match the Vikings offense, who is going to trounce Atlanta and their non-existent pass rush. Give me Minnesota. It may look like a close game on paper, but it'll be handily won by the Vikings.
There's something you missed and didn't quite address yet. If you thought the last couple weeks have been bad for the Falcons, it's going to be even worse heading to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. The Vikings, they know Kirk Cousins better than anyone. He's been on their team for the past few seasons. They know what makes him tick. They know what throws he wants to hit and make in the biggest moments. They know intimately what situations make him the most uncomfortable. They've had him in practice. They know him better than anyone. Probably better than the current Falcons coaching staff knows him. So when you have a diminished Kirk Cousins playing a team that knows him better than his own coaching staff, it is going to be a long week. I know he threw 4 interceptions last week. I don't know if it will quite be that bad, but I expect the Vikings to have 4 or 5 sacks on him and at least 2 interceptions with a win.
I mean, that goes both ways. Knowing Flores' defense getting to practice against it for an entire year will be beneficial for Kirk. Flores is not massively altering his own game plan just to try and get a one-up on Cousins. He's going to do his thing. Kirk's going to do his. I tend to agree, though. Atlanta's not winning this game. Minnesota moves to 11-2.
This is a worse game. I think that one maybe will have some bright spots. We have the Jets headed to Miami, and while Miami has had some rough games here or there with Tua returning, that Packers game was not good. We kind of knew that was going to happen. They are not a team that travels well to cold weather, and this Jets team, they haven't put it together really all season long under Aaron Rodgers, in spite of all the talent they have on offense. So when you're playing a Dolphins team that has taken advantage of some worse offensive lines here or there, Aaron Rodgers, maybe the 25th best quarterback in the NFL at this point in his career. I think the Dolphins' defensive line is going to get after them, and since they're in Miami, we know that offense is going to be flying all over the place.
25th is generous. Rodgers is at best a bottom 3 quarterback. Mentally, he's not there. He is not preparing at a high enough level. Physically, he is clearly diminished, cannot escape the pocket as well. The throws are just not as crisp. If he had any decency, he would have retired last season, given up his money, let the Jets sort out their future on their own. He didn't. They're screwed. Miami is absolutely torching this Jets defense, which looks like nothing it has in the past 2 years under Saw, now that he's been fired. Sneakily, their secondary is actually kind of good. They're going to pick off Rodgers at least once, maybe twice, maybe thrice, and not much more needs to be said. Another stinker here, the Giants hosting the Saints. I tend to side with the Giants on this one. Their defensive line should bully the Saints' offensive line. I probably prefer Tyrone Tracy, the runner, to Alvin Kamara, the runner right now. Derek Carr certainly has an advantage over Drew Lock, Tommy Palms, whatever they're rolling out there. Tim Boyle. But still.
Brian Dable might take a few snaps.
Brian Dable may get a few snaps. He's certainly a better coach than the Rizzler. And the talent, this is just a bad game. Like, what? NFL, why have you done this to us? The Giants are winning, but it's a bad week.
I tried to talk myself into agreeing with you with Taysom Hill being done for the year because of his ACL injury. He's had a couple big games over the last few weeks that have elevated the Saints offense to some very productive games. But when you take a look at that Giants defensive line, they are very injured. Dexter Lawrence, who's having a defensive player of the year like campaign if the Giants could get anything done on the offensive side of the ball and support him with some victories to bolster it. He's done for the year with an elbow dislocation. Azeez Ojulari, who was very productive in the time he has been on the field this season, he is on the IR. So the Giants, even though the pass rush has been good, they have not been good against the run. And with the best player on their defense not being on the field, I think Alvin Kamara and the Saints rushing attack is going to be able to take advantage of that, also helping them to be successful in the play action game. So I think the Saints still should win.
I mean, it's a terrible game. It's not going to surprise me one way or the other which bad team wins this and hurts their own draft stock.
Any dynamic picks for the Panthers and Eagles?
This actually is one of the more compelling games of the week to me because how good Bryce Young has been the past few weeks. Had a very solid performance against a top 5 defense in the Kansas City Chiefs. I can definitely see him replicating that against the Eagles. It's going to be a little bit harder for him. The D-line of the Eagles is certainly bigger, moves around better. He's going to be able to get more pressure on the inside against his O-line. That's going to hinder him a little bit. Their run defense is better than the Chiefs, but I just don't think he can keep up with Saquon Barkley. He can't keep up with A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, whoever else the Eagles are rolling out there and throwing passes to. It just won't be enough. Saquon might get back on track for that rushing record this week. It's just going to be a lopsided affair offensively. Maybe Young is able to do enough to keep it close, and it's like 35-27. But give me the Eagles.
The Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, the comparison's getting a little bit more real with C.J. Stroud.
Never wrong, just early.
C.J. Stroud struggling. And the sample size for Bryce Young having good games is still very small relative to the bad performances he put up this year, joined with the bad performances he had as a rookie. But the last 2 weeks, 300 yards passing, 263 yards passing against the Chiefs, has looked very solid, has been very close to winning both those games. He has certainly taken a next step from what we saw earlier this season, and that doesn't mean it's going to be enough. There's a reason the Eagles are favored. The money line odds are minus 800. They have more talent on the offensive side of the ball. They're statistically the best defensive team in the NFL. They're at home in Philadelphia. Should be a pretty easy win.
Important thing to note here, Bryce Young did in fact do enough for the Panthers to win against the Buccaneers last week, but Chuba Hubbard, their often reliable back, fumbled it away in the red zone. What can you do?
Now, Cleveland is heading to Pittsburgh. The Steelers looking to rebound from what was an embarrassing loss a couple weeks ago in the snow. They did pretty good last week, putting up 44 points against that Bengals defense, but this Cleveland defense is a different animal and certainly will give them a little bit more trouble on that front. I'm still going to pick the Steelers to win this game because I think they're going to evaluate where they went wrong. They're going to make some changes. They're going to run the ball better, and Russell Wilson and hopefully better weather is going to be able to push the ball down the field a little bit more, and I think they get some Jameis Winston turnovers to go in their favor. The only circumstance I could see the Steelers blowing this game is if they get caught looking ahead, because maybe they chalk up the Browns' loss a couple weeks ago to the fact that it was in the snow. They know they're a better well-coached team right now, and they have the Chiefs, Ravens, and Eagles ahead of them over a 3-game stretch. So if that happens, maybe the game gets a lot closer than Steelers fans want it to get, but I do still think the Steelers win.
Tomlin and company do enjoy playing down to inferior opponents. Important thing to know about the Cleveland Browns, Jameis Winston against a really good Broncos defense threw for close to 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. Unfortunately, over 100 of those yards and 2 of those touchdowns were to the Broncos. You don't know what you're going to get with this guy. It's the same thing with Jameis we see every year of his career. If he absolutely lights the world on fire, throws for 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 350 yards, then the Browns have a really good shot of winning this game. And he can do that to pretty much anybody. I don't think he's got it in him this week. I think 2 weeks in a row of really high-level volume is just going to be too much. He's got to throw a bunch of interceptions, maybe 1 touchdown, and it's not going to be that good of an offensive performance. Steelers defense, elite. Their offense, great performance against the Bengals. Probably not able to match that, but if James is spotting him 2 touchdowns, they will probably get to 44 again. I'm taking Pittsburgh. Tampa Bay hosting the Raiders. This is not going to be a competitive game. The only thing going on for the Raiders right now is Brock Bowers' Offensive Rookie of the Year campaign. The Buccaneers are fighting for that NFC South Division title. They've got a pretty good shot at getting it, particularly with the Falcons picking up a loss to the Vikings this week. I think they run over this Raiders team. Their running game's better, their O-line's better, their D-line's better. They're better everywhere besides tight end. It's not going to be close. The Buccaneers are winning this one at home, and Mike Evans is getting a crisp 142 receiving yards.
Last week, the game was too close for the Buccaneers to really be comfortable with the result. Their Chuba Hubbard not fumbling away from losing that football game. But since Mike Evans has returned to the offense, their passing game has been opened back up again. Their running game, because they actually have a passing game, has been much better. Bucky Irving has 240 total rushing yards over the previous 2 weeks combined. So I think the Buccaneers just have too much talent with a healthy Mike Evans on the field. The Raiders, you said it, they have Brock Bowers and pretty much nothing else. So a pretty easy win for the Buccaneers.
Raiders are arguably the worst team in football. It's them and the New Yorkers.
And the Jaguars with Mac Jones.
I think I might take a Mac attack over a, O'Connell, what do you even call it? Anyway.
Speaking of the Mac attack, the Jaguars are headed to Tennessee to take on the Titans. And me and Isaiah both picked the Titans last week to upset the Commanders. The Commanders kind of laughed in our face and took it to the Titans and beat them handedly. But this Titans team, they have gotten things going a little bit with Will Levis and that passing attack. He has been airing some teams out. There are some very positive splash plays here and there. And against a team that does not have a good passing attack, they've proven to be bad all season long. Will Levis is going to air things out to Nikhil Westbrook-Akina, and the Titans win.
Well, air him out by throwing 2 passes to him, which are both somehow touchdowns. He's going to have 12 yards and 2 touchdowns, Tristan. Is not going to be airing it out. But yeah, the Jaguars have the worst passing defense in football, in my opinion. Mac Jones is their quarterback. The hit from Azeez Al-Shaair fires him up. Either way, I don't see it happening. Well, it's not our fault the Titans lost last week, okay? They had 2 fumbles in the first 2 minutes of that game, which both result in touchdowns. If those don't happen, much more competitive game. But Tony Pollard's got butterfingers. What can you do? I'm also picking Tennessee. On to the Cardinals hosting the Seahawks. And a few weeks ago, the Cardinals got punked by Seattle. Their offense did absolutely nothing, and despite their defense's best efforts, they still lost the game. That is not happening again. The Cardinals defense is among the best in football over the past month. They are going to lock the Seahawks down a second time, but this time, James Conner is going to continue to get those carries. He's not going to be stifled at 7 or 8. They are going to continue to pound this one out, and if push comes to shove, the O-line is going to bully Leonard Williams and company on the interior for the Seahawks. Arizona is going to control this game on the ground. They will pass it only if they need to. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get involved at some point. I think he's got a long one in him this week, and Arizona is winning.
I would agree. I mean, over the last 2 to 3 weeks, these teams have had very different results. The Seahawks have put themselves back in the playoff picture with wins over the 49ers, Jets, and Cardinals. The Cardinals, on the other hand, are coming off of 2 straight losses where they lost 16-6 to the Seahawks, and last week they blew the game late against the Vikings. So they're looking to rebound, and I think they will. I think from an offensive perspective, they're going to take a look at what went wrong against the Seahawks the first time around. They're going to take a look at where they made mistakes last week against the Vikings, and they're going to fix things enough to beat this Seahawks team. These 2 teams are very comparable when it comes to offensive talent. I think I'd give the Cardinals the edge with how Jonathan Gannon has coached up that defense. They're a top 5 defense in the NFL over the previous 6 weeks, and I think they get things done in Arizona. Bills headed to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. And the Bills, they're the hottest team in the NFL during the regular season right now. They've been taking it to every single team they've played since that really bad Josh Allen performance against the Texans, what was that, 8 weeks ago now at this point? They're not anything close to that performance. They're the best team in the NFL right now. The Rams, they have some ways they can threaten the Bills' defense. Matthew Stafford still playing at a pretty high level. Puka Nacua, since coming back from injury, playing at a very high level. Kyren Williams has been one of the better running backs in the NFL this year. Cooper Kupp, better than he was last season. But on the defensive side of the ball, they have some young talent that has had a lot of bright spots. Jared Verse to be one of them, but they're not quite there yet. The Bills, I think they have more veteran talent. They're going to be able to get to Matthew Stafford more than the Rams get to Josh Allen, and the Bills are going to travel to Los Angeles and win.
Yeah, the O-line started to break down once again for the Rams. They're not that much of a threat to Buffalo, particularly if Von Miller has an exceptional performance against his former team, as he is prone to do. The Bills' offense is going to light up LA's defense. I know you mentioned Jared Verse. He's really been the biggest bright spot. Him and Byron are the 2 most dominant players on that defense. Outside of them, when their secondary has to cover for more than 2.5 seconds, it gets a little bit rough. The Bills are lighting this team up. It's not going to be that competitive. They're winning in a dome in LA, and the only player right now who can challenge Josh Allen for his MVP is Saquon Barkley. On to the 49ers hosting the Bears. And these are 2 of the 3 most disappointing teams in football, in my opinion. The Bears had to fire their coach during the year. Caleb Williams has not been what we expected. Their O-line stinks. Their defense has taken a few steps back recently. The 49ers, incredibly injury prone. The only player left standing of meaningful note on that team is battling through a broken ankle and a whole lot of horse painkiller. It's going to be a rough showing. On principle, I'm picking against the Bears. I would like to go with the interim head coach boost, but I just can't do it. This Bears team stinks, particularly on the road. It's not happening. They're done. They're cooked. Caleb Williams, a crisp 300 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. 0 production from the running game, and San Francisco just kind of crawls their way to a victory.
The Bears, under Thomas Brown, offensive coordinator at least. They've been scoring a lot more points. Caleb Williams has been a lot more productive. And this 49ers team, they're banged up all over the place. Brock Purdy has that shoulder injury he's dealing with. Christian McCaffrey, done for the year. They're on their third string running back. Trent Williams dealing with an ankle injury if he's able to play in this one. Nick Bosa also dealing with an injury. Fred Warner, he's been very good this year, but he's kind of the only functioning piece of that 49ers defense. I trust in the Bears. I trust in the interim head coaching boost we see happen very often across the NFL over the years. So I think the Bears are going to head to San Francisco. I know they haven't been good on the road, but I do think they are able to get a win because of the healthier team. And I think with the way injuries are, you can make an argument than the more talented team right now.
I think it's a gigantic misnomer to say their offense has been better under Thomas Brown. They have scored more points in the last 2 weeks than they should have because the Vikings and the Lions both took their foot off the gas defensively and were playing prevent. If they had kept the pressure on and locked in, I truly believe Chicago would not have cracked 14. In either of those games, their running game just isn't that good. I just can't see him winning this one. I have more faith in Kyle Shanahan than I do Thomas Brown if we want to get down to it in terms of coaching.
I think it's a little ridiculous to say they took the foot off the gas. The Vikings, they didn't want to go to overtime. They weren't trying to go to overtime.
The Bears had 10 points with 6 minutes left in the game. Something went wrong.
And if
there.
we did not have Matt Eberflus completely just not knowing how to do any type of clock management, the Bears probably drive down the field and win that game with a touchdown. So I think I would not agree with that.
What are you talking about? They drove down the field to tie it up in regulation. You are off.
They didn't tie it. They
tied
sacked.
it up in regulation. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the Vikings game.
I just talked about the Vikings, and then I talked about, you named 2 games. The other game, if Matt Eberflus does not ruin the game with poor clock mismanagement, then we don't have Caleb Williams.
You got to specify you're talking about the Lions there. You went from talking about the Vikings without mentioning you were switching to the
I said they didn't want to go to overtime, and then I said the next week
there's a communication breakdown, whether that be in the Bears coaching staff or in our film. Talk about the AFC West.
Bears are winning that one. Chargers, they're headed to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. The Chiefs have that coveted home field advantage, and I think the Chiefs do still win this one because the Chargers, not the same offense with J.K. Dobbins not on the field. We saw that a little bit last week against the Falcons, who are not nearly as talented as the Chiefs, especially from the front 7 perspective. And I think Chris Jones at front 7 will give Justin Herbert some issues. And the big threat the Chargers have on offense, really their only threat right now, Ladd McConkey banged up with a knee injury. Quentin Johnson, he's slowed down from the bright spots we saw earlier in the season. And I understand the Chargers have a very good defense. So I think it's going to be a close game, but the Chiefs have more offensive talent, and I ultimately think they get it done.
Yeah, a few things you have not quite made note of. Last time these two teams played, the score was 17-10. The Chargers lost because they just couldn't do anything offensively with the passing attack. J.K. Dobbins, even though he was on the field, was not a factor. Him not being in this game doesn't change much. They were missing both their tackles that game. They've got him this week. Ladd McConkey was not playing anywhere close to the level he has been, even with a banged-up knee over that stretch compared to now. I think the Chargers offense is going to be more productive. Get 17, 18, 19, maybe 20 points. I think this Chiefs defense is able to generate some pressure, sure, but it just won't be the same as it was in the first match. Chiefs offense getting folded in half by the Chargers defense. Snapped up, put in a locker, held under 20. I got the Chargers winning this one. Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert are going in and snatching Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's souls. It's what Harbaugh does. They're winning this one on the road.
Isaiah Pacheco also back.
Good for him. He's still running like he's got a plate in his ankle. A game which should be exciting. A game which is now just going to be a snooze fest. The Bengals taking on the Cowboys at Jerry World on Monday Night Football. The Cowboys don't have an offense or a defense. The Bengals only have an offense. Their defense stinks. If Dak was playing, maybe this game's competitive, a high-scoring shootout. That's not happening. It's going to be like 50-10 or something like that. Cooper Rush is not him. He'll never be him. We'll never see Trey Lance because Jerry Boy's worried about starting a quarterback controversy if Lance is good. And all in all, just a bad offering for primetime.
The Bengals, they're coming off a 3-game losing streak, but that losing streak was against the Ravens, Chargers, and Steelers. So those are much better teams and a different animal than playing this Cowboys team. Now, the Cowboys, they can make it close because of how bad this Bengals defense is. That is totally in the cards. But when you have a Bengals offense that is putting up close to 40 points on the Steelers, they took it to the Ravens. That was a very close game. It was a close game against the Chargers. It'll probably wind up being close, like I said, because of how bad their defense is. But this Bengals offense is putting up 30-plus on a Cowboys defense that has been rough this year.
Those teams you named had Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson playing quarterback for them. It's not the same. Cooper Rush may get to 20. That's me throwing him a bone. 20 points seems about right, unless the Bengals just turn it over 17 times, just keep giving him possessions. It's not happening. The Bengals are winning.
That has been our Week 14 predictions. Let us know your predictions down in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe, use code Thicc on Underdog. Bonus cash up to $1,000 if you want to help support us, and we'll see you in the next one.